welcome to another episode of 9 to 5 Mac Overtime. Today we got some goodies coming up. We got some leaks of some new products, hopefully. Vision Pro came and went, and now we're looking forward. But I am your co-host, Fernando, and this is...
Jeff Benjamin. How's it going, everybody?
Happy Saturday, hopefully, depending on when this is going on. Everybody's enjoying their weekend, getting you guys through maybe a little car ride with the family or something like that, or maybe a little treadmill workout. But we're here with another good show. I'm excited for this one. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm excited as well. Like that iPad story was a big one.
Yeah.
So
I'm definitely ready
I know you're excited for sure.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. And let's just dive right into it, man. We got some news. Our very own Felipe got some insider source news that we got new dimensions for iPads, man. And we're finally, I'm saying finally, but it's going to complicate the lineup even more. But we're getting a new, not product category, but just like a new iPad in general with a new iPad Air. And then we got the dimensions of the new iPad Pros. But I think let's start with the iPad Airs, right? So iPad Airs, from a dimension standpoint, it's going to be the same 10.9-inch one. So it'll still have the same 11-inch iPad Pro form factor, the same iPad Air form factor that we've kind of grown to love. Still the single camera. I think it's going to be like a millimeter or like a 0.1 millimeter thinner than the previous one. But the bigger showstopper, in my opinion, is that we're getting a 12.9-inch iPad Air, which I think is a beautiful idea. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we talked about this in the last episode a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big deal. That thing is going to sell. That's going to be a hot seller for sure. Especially if it's priced in a reasonable area. I think it's probably going to occupy the price of the 11-inch Pro.
I think so too.
Close to that, and then the Pros are going to be more expensive, but I think it's going to sell pretty well.
No, I agree. The same way that iPhone 15 Plus is selling well, the same way the 15-inch MacBook Air is selling well. People don't really care about, or at least a lot of people don't really care about promotion and the latest and greatest screen tech. They just want a crisp operating system that works. iPadOS is known to work. It's been ahead of its time, in my opinion, at least from a usability standpoint, maybe not from the ins and outs on the software, but you turn on an iPad, it's going to work no matter if it's a year old or 7 years old, which is crazy. So people just want that bigger display, and I think we're finally going to get it with this new iPad Air. I essentially think it's going to be a 2018 iPad Pro without ProMotion. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, right? The 12.9-inch version, right? And that's cool because those have always started at like $1,000. Yeah. So you're getting in the game close to $800 or so, $700-800. With the 12.9-inch display, that's pretty nice.
Now, what do you think about because the iPad, one of the detriments of the iPad Air, at least the current one, is it's nice that it has the M1 iPad Pro, and it's the cheapest. It's nice that it has the M1 chip. I'm sorry, and it's the cheapest way to be able to use things like Stage Manager and extended monitor support for an iPad. But it starts at 64 gigs right now for $600, which is crazy in 2024. Do we think we're going to get 128 for the baseline?
I would think so. Yeah. It's just 60. Yeah, I would think so for that price. And it just seems like it would be ridiculous. Never say never, but it seems like it would be ridiculous that to start off as such a low amount of storage in 2024.
Yeah, I can't imagine a 12.9-inch iPad Air at $800 starting at 64 gigs.
No.
Would they operate, I feel like iPadOS 17 would barely be able to run at that point,
Yeah, it's just, that would be crazy. Let's hope for the best.
Let's hope for the best there. And then, I'm sure Apple's going to keep the same type of increments in capacity. They'll probably only give us one larger increment. I bet you it'll be like 128 or 512. And that's pretty much pick your poison in terms of what you want to upgrade and then kind of go from there. And then do you think it's going to work with, I guess it'll continue to work with all the different accessories that are currently out right now, right?
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about it. Having that same form factor, it's going to work with what I'm using right now. Hopefully, the Magic Keyboard. Of course, it'll work with the Apple Pencil. And there's lots of other accessories out there that it should play nice with.
Now, another thing, before we get into the iPad Pro, do you think they're going to change the orientation of the camera on the Air? Or that's going to be just a pro-level feature?
I would hope it would change.
Yeah.
But that obviously introduces complications with some accessories. The cheapest iPad now has that. Well, technically, is it still the cheapest? Are they still selling the 9th gen?
they still technically do, but I'm still considering the 10th gen the cheapest one.
Yeah. So yeah, if that, I feel like that set like the stage for what's to come, because there were no new iPads last year at all.
Yeah.
So I think, like, why would Apple just change that one model to introduce a feature that people have been wanting for for years?
For so
Just
long.
yeah.
And I mean, just to go back to that 10th gen iPad, the Apple Pencil situation on that thing, Apple loves to just complicate things for what seems to be like no reason, you know, and then just confuse us even more.
Yeah, we are so far from, like, remember the Steve Jobs, like the quadrant like thing, is the simplicity of the setup there. We're so far removed from that, which is a good thing in some respects, because the more options the better, but sometimes there's so many options it gets confusing, and the iPad lineup is probably the most confusing that's ever been. I'm trying to imagine myself as just a, like, my mom or somebody like that, trying to decide what iPad do I buy, and it's just super confusing. So most people just say, hey, I just want the cheapest, even if it's going to be a worse experience, or it doesn't really fulfill what they need. It's just so confusing, you just kind of default to, well, what's the cheapest iPad?
No, even my dad is in the market for a new iPad. He had just an old one that kind of just croaked after a while, and like I don't know what to recommend to him because he had a, I want to say it was the first iPad Pro, like with the home button still. I think it was like a 10 point something inch, right? But
Oh,
yeah, that one,
10.5.
yeah, the 10.5 one
Yeah.
that's worked with the Apple Pencil one.
Yeah.
That thing was from like 2016 or something, 2017, but it was working. But one day it just kind of stopped. But I don't know what to recommend him because he uses it to surf the web, watch YouTube, do some normal stuff. But every now and then he likes to do a little bit of work stuff. He'll open up a PowerPoint here and there and stuff like that. So I'm like, first off, I said wait a couple weeks, because whatever happens, and then whether new ones come out, old ones are gonna get cheaper, and then kind of just figure it out from there. I think he's gonna go iPad Air route, but he could go with an iPad Pro, or he could go with an iPad 10th generation. It's just there's no real rhyme or reason to go with either of the other ones.
Yeah, and then you throw in, on top of all the new hardware, all the refurbished and all the used items that are, like, and not even used, but just old stock. Do you recommend a 2018 iPad Pro? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Over an iPad Air, it could be actually cheaper.
and you get the better screen, and like again, there's so many things to like. My wife's 2018 iPad Pro still works perfectly. That thing is 6 years old. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And it's still powerful. She still has her slim folio keyboard. There's never been an issue with it. It's just right now it's like the baby monitor, which is an expensive baby monitor, but it's the iPads, they hold the best resale value in my opinion. They last a long time, but right now it's just very confusing as to what to recommend. Go new, go old, go with a cheaper one, go with a more expensive one. It just depends, I guess, on who you are and how you're feeling that day.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not such a drastic difference that,
Mm-hmm.
in general, like, if you're just a general user, like, the experience with a 10th generation entry level iPad is pretty much the same experience with the highest of the highest in iPad Pro, like, for the most part.
I would say like the 10th gen gets you 95% of what the fully loaded iPad Pro gets you. For a baseline iPad Pro, you can get two 10th generations, two and a half of them, or even get like four ninth generation iPads if you really want to, if you're okay having the big forehead and chin. That's the iPad lineup for everybody. You know, leave
Yeah.
some comments down below. I would want to know like what is the most used iPad among our audience. You know, is it you guys go fully loaded on the Pro? Is it just a leisure device? You use it for a little bit of work, kind of in between? Always happy to kind of discuss that stuff because, you know, like I use my iPad kind of as my main workhorse, which is funny enough, versus most people like to use it. Like, I don't know, Jeff, what is your use case right now for your iPad?
It is just usually like really random things. Like, I just, like, if I don't feel like unplugging my MacBook Pro and I want to read something in the kitchen, then I'll use my iPad. Or, I don't know, man. It's just usually completely random. There's no, like, I don't have a workflow, so to speak, for the iPad.
Yeah, so you could get away with a lesser version of the iPad and not like the iPad
E-
Pro. Yeah,
easily, because I
easily.
don't use the Apple Pencil really. I don't.
Mm,
I mean, obviously, I don't. I appreciate the having a laminated display. That's the biggest difference to
yeah.
me. Like, you don't get that laminated display with the old with the entry level, and
Mm,
that I can easily discern that, because it looks like the content is, like, sitting below the screen.
Yeah.
Whereas with the higher end laminated models, it looks like you're touching the content. So that's the
Mm.
only big difference, in my opinion, that turns me off of the entry level iPads.
I agree with that. No, yeah, everybody has their own rhyme or reason for using their iPad, depending on which one you have and what your use cases are. Now, for me, which I'm very happy about, is we also got the dimensions for the new iPad Pro at least, which has, from a form factor standpoint, I don't think it's going to change too much from a form factor standpoint, but I think it'll be the same upgrade or difference from the iPhone 14 Pro Max to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, where it's like it still really looks 95% of the way the same, but there are some slight differences in the actual visual hardware, which is going to be a nice little touch because the iPad to me has looked the same since 2018,
Yeah,
which is, it was ahead of its time back then, in my opinion.
definitely.
Yeah. So the big key things here are, from a size proportion, is that it's going to get way slimmer, right? So by way slimmer, I mean going from 6 millimeters to 5 millimeters, which is already crazy.
That's super thin. Like
Yeah.
that's thin to the point where I'm like, you get worried about bending the thing.
Yeah, we're going back
It's
to the unbox therapy days of bending the
yeah,
iPhone 6. I mean, Apple says it's because we're going OLED versus mini LED, and apparently that display tech, I mean, I don't know if you know a little bit more, but the display tech is just thinner, so they're able to, save some space there. But I'm surprised they didn't go with a bigger battery. Like, leave it the same thickness, because I don't think people were complaining about how thick this thing was, and give me a bigger battery.
but at the same time, OLED draw doesn't require nearly as much battery. That as a display tech, so it would be lesser draw on the battery. So maybe it's sort of like they're able to maintain. No doubt they're able to maintain the current battery life
Yeah.
with the thinner form factor. But maybe they could have dramatically increased battery life. But I don't really
Mm.
hear that many people complaining about battery life for iPads, generally
Yeah.
speaking, unless they're like someone like you who uses video editing software, because that is a killer for the battery
Yeah.
on the iPad. But for general like reading and browsing, like iPads have pretty incredible battery life already.
No, it's true. Like, even just like video consumption, that thing will last you for 10 hours easy, which is crazy. You're right. Like, my use case, my battery does drain relatively quickly, but I practice the worst battery life, I guess, health protocols or whatever. Like, I'm always plugged into power. I always have
Yeah.
an SSD plugged into it. I have brightness fully on. Auto lock is turned off.
Oh yeah.
Everything. I'm just always maxing that thing out.
You open up the battery settings and it's like all these suggestions telling you to do all these different things. Yeah, I get it.
Sometimes I get that. I feel that thing getting, like, the other day it got warm for the first time. I was like, well, maybe I'm doing a little too much on this thing. But yeah, so I think the battery life, you're right. They wouldn't give us worse battery life, and that's probably why they're just like, let's slim it out. And I also think the reason they're going with a slimmer design, it might be a little bit more lightweight, is because supposedly we're getting a new Magic Keyboard, right? And the Magic Keyboard combined with the iPad Pro currently is pretty heavy.
It's thicker than a MacBook Air. So it's like, why, if you're going just simply for form factor, like a lot of people will say, hey, I want to use an iPad because I want the thinnest, like
Mm.
the most lightweight setup. And then they get this setup right here, and they're like, oh, it's actually thicker than than my MacBook Air. So
Yeah.
I think that, to your point, that's a good observation, because if there is a new Magic Keyboard and that Magic Keyboard is redesigned, maybe it's a little bit heavier because of the materials that are rumored to be used with it. Obviously, thinning the iPad Pro will go a long way towards making that a little bit more compact.
I think that's why it's getting a little thinner and a little slimmer. So that, we'll see what happens. I'm just excited overall. It's the first time I've been excited about iPad in a little while. And then I tweeted the other day, I was like, is it bad that I'm more excited for the iPad lineup coming out in March than I was for the Vision Pro? I might have been gassing people a little bit with that one because I was pretty excited about the Vision Pro, but I am excited about the iPad for sure.
We take it for granted now, right? Like the
Yeah, we
iPad,
do.
like, but there's a big slab of glass and metal that has the full internet. You can run all sorts of
Mm-hmm.
crazy powerful apps. It's a super powerful computer in the form factor like that, and you're able to hold it with one hand, like
Yep.
just like that, and just read and move it around. But imagine if it was much thinner,
Yeah.
how much improved that experience would be. So I think it's going to be thin to the point where it's going to be like, wow, maybe they'll pull it out of an envelope like they did
Ooh, the
with the MacBook
throwback.
Air. Yeah, maybe
I
we'll
would
do
love
the
that.
throwback.
I'd probably get chills, honestly, if that happened. If Tim Cook just, comes out with pulls it out of the manila envelope.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. But now so that's iPad stuff. I didn't want to take up the whole show talking about iPad because I can keep going with iPad for sure. But I know that you made a video recapping iOS 17.4 because we got a new beta update and there was actually some, actual tangible changes.
Yeah. One of
Let the people
the
know.
cool changes is you get a new hello screen. So
Ooh.
when you obviously if you're upgrading, it doesn't apply to users that are getting new devices because how would it know who the
Yeah.
person belonged to? But so if you're upgrading, you get a new hello screen, same screen, but you get a little icon that shows
Mm-hmm.
your profile photo.
Nice.
So of course, my thinking, I go immediately to, oh, are we getting like user profiles now that we can switch
What?
like on the Mac?
Wow,
Obviously
I didn't even
not,
think of
right?
that.
Obviously not. I
Yeah.
wouldn't think. Maybe on the iPad, maybe iPad OS
Maybe iPad OS
18 will give
18. Yeah.
us. I mean, it almost looks like the login screen on the Mac.
Yeah, it does.
Um,
It really does.
so who knows? Maybe we could hope. I don't think it will apply to the iPhone. Obviously, it's a personal device, but the iPad can be easily a shared communal
For sure.
device.
Yeah, like imagine passing that thing around in the back seat with like three kids or something. They all want to watch different movies, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely think like there's definitely a big use case for more than one user on one iPad.
For sure.
Apple needs to fix that.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe, but there's some other little things in there. You get the updated CarPlay interface,
Mm-hmm.
which for the dual screen CarPlay setups, being able to move the navigation data over to the instrument cluster and back and forth like that. What else was new in that? Some battery health updates. So
Oh
now
yeah.
the battery health, when you go to settings, battery, previously it combined that with optimized charging. So all that data was in like one settings panel, but now Apple's broken it out. So your battery health settings and optimized charging are now two separate panels.
Which is
Um,
nice.
yeah. And then Apple also removed the cycle count for your battery, the manufacture date, and the first use date information from settings general about to settings battery, which makes a lot more sense
It
to
does,
have that
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
And then finally, there's that new quantum computer protection for iMessage, which
This is
is
just buzzwords galore.
yeah, quantum computers are like super powerful computers, right? And eventually, security researchers think that like in 10 years, those quantum computers will be powerful enough and fast enough to be able to crack current encryption, like the current encryption that's used with iMessage. So the end-to-end encryption with iMessage, um, security researchers think that and similar types of encryption at that level will be able to be cracked by these quantum computers. So why is that a problem? Well, say someone stole your iMessage data, they could not actually view it now because it's encrypted and there's no way to crack that encryption yet. So what they would do is just hoard all that data, wait 10 years until these quantum computers are powerful enough and they exist to be able to crack that encryption, and then they have all your message data from 10 years ago, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh, I
I mean, it's
mean,
still kind of crazy.
it is
Yeah.
crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, that doesn't just apply to iMessage. I mean, that's any computer or any sort of service that uses this sort of encryption. And so Apple is going to go ahead and implement, they already have implemented that in the 17.4 beta. So with the idea of not only having more powerful encryption, but also regenerating encryption keys, like
Ooh, in real time.
perpetually. Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
forever.
yeah. So it's like, so say that quantum encryption does get compromised, one of the keys gets compromised, you can see your conversation data. Well, that conversation data, a new key will be generated for that and then
Oh.
re-encrypted. So even if someone gets the key, a new key is generated. Yeah, it's just an interesting concept, like being able to have like self-healing. It's almost like self-healing,
Yeah.
like paint protection film.
Do we have to turn something on or no? It's
No,
all just happening in the background, right?
yeah. So when you upgrade to watchOS, the equivalent versions, watchOS, macOS, iOS, and iPad OS, then you're basically
You're there.
you're opted in. Yeah. So
Cool.
I guess what's most interesting is that Apple, like of all people, all companies, they would know that this is a real threat, right?
Yeah,
So it's
for
like,
sure.
yeah, they see this coming, and eventually it's going to get to the point where the current encryption just isn't enough.
And then the last thing that we kind of wanted to bring up that Apple also released yesterday, or was it 2 days ago now at this point, a new application, a new native application, native sports app. So you guys may or may not have noticed over the last couple of years, Apple's been heavily investing in the sports world. I guess they see that it's a common ground for a lot of people, a lot of different cultures kind of come together, and they're able to find that common ground with sports. And then also, it's just a very lucrative space right now. Sports is going crazy, from valuations of sports teams and sports leagues to betting in the US and all this stuff that's happening. So Apple, last year bought the rights to MLS for 10 years, so to be able to broadcast that, which I thought was awesome. I think they fought for the ability to have DirecTV Sunday Ticket, or just Sunday Ticket now at this point, which is the NFL version of that. They lost that to YouTube. But now they're doubling down on a sports application. I believe also last year they added a section in the Apple TV app that was kind of maybe like a testing ground for this, where it was just all sports information, and now they broke it off into a separate application. So this is the Apple Sports app, and they took, in my opinion, the same approach that they took with the Journal app, which was like the simpler the better. Keep it simple. It's here to do one or two things and nothing really else. Like, I don't know if you've downloaded something like ESPN recently, or Scoreboard, or Bleacher Report. There's a lot going on in those apps, man. They're trying to sell you on ESPN Plus. They're trying to create some sort of social network where you can comment on people's things. Like, they're trying to do original content on ESPN. So when I open the ESPN app, it's just an overload of information that I just want to see the score, man.
Yeah, there's like pop-ups and all sorts of
Yeah.
other nonsense, and all this stuff about sports betting, and it's just it's a terrible experience. Like, I don't even bother with the ESPN app anymore, honestly.
Me either.
Like, I'll just search them. Yeah. Apple is like taking the complete opposite take on that, like you said, almost to the point where it's a little too simple, in my opinion. But obviously, this is version 1.0. To me, it feels different than like the animations are interesting. That's kind of the first thing that stuck out to me. Is like just the animations are, I don't know.
Somebody tweeted, I think it was Parker that tweeted that they'd also noticed that just the way that some of the animations are moving, and even some of the icons look a little different, and it could be kind of a little window into what iOS 18 could be acting like in the future, which I kind of believe. But yeah, the app itself is very bare bones right now, right? Like I said, they took the same approach with the Journal app. There's not even like a menu bar on the bottom. There's one option on the top right, which is your Apple ID, and then for you to manage your leagues and your teams. And right now, it's essentially to be able to view scores, view games, not view games, but view the scores in real time. So you get like live score updates. You get to see statistics on your players and things like that, but you can't even follow individual players like you could with the Apple TV section version of the sports application. But I think for what it's for, it's perfect, right? It gives you just enough information for you to go in, check it in real time. Every single league, every major league is in there for the most part, except for the NFL and college football, because they're in the off season. So I guess they figured there's no point in adding that right now. But I already added, my Miami Heat were in there, my Florida Panthers, the Hurricanes, all my Miami sports teams were in there, intra Miami. So I'm enjoying the app. The UI is nice, animations are cool, very simple, and you get exactly what you're looking for, which is stats and scores.
Yeah, it's a nicely designed app. I even like the you notice the animations that occur like when you look at a game's like summary, like the colors of the logo are like sort of a gradient that's moving slowly. It's kind of cool.
And then also, if you click on a game, it opens up kind of like a card where like the back of the application is still visible, and then if you swipe up, it takes up the whole screen. It like kind of like opens up a little bit more, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, overall, I like the app. It's going to be my sports app moving forward because I don't do too much. Like, I'm not big into betting at all to begin with. It does give you the odds of the games. Some people were hit or miss on that, but you can turn it off in the settings if you don't want to see the odds of the games. So if you're not into that, turn it off. I like to see the odds just to see what teams are favored. In my opinion.
I think that's, to me, like the majority of people. Well, maybe not, because betting is such a
in the US. I think it's crazy right now.
It's insane. Like I get so annoyed with all these commercials, but I'm not going to go there. But anyway, I'm glad there's an option to turn it off, because that's like the only setting, isn't it? In the settings,
only setting option. Turn off showing the betting odds.
But you know what the big like missing feature is of this?
Oh yeah.
Why? live activities. There's no live activities. Like, how's that? How do they ship this with the most obvious feature for a sports app? Like, that's
right? Like, give me the live activity. And I've been loving live. I mean, not a lot of apps have live activities, but like when they show up, I really like them. So I don't know why Apple didn't do it for this app. Like you said, this application would have been perfect for it. And I'm sure, like we said, this is 1.0.
Yeah, it's
Come.
coming. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm. There's no way I can make something like this. So it's like I'm not bashing it. It's, I think we do that. Like, people, just reviewers or just critics in general, like they're so quick to like, why didn't they do this? Like, all right, you do it then. That's what.
Yeah, right.
I gotta.
I'm sure. Like, I mean, in theory, it sounds easy, but I'm sure there's a lot more under the hood.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts and stuff. So I'm not saying that, but it's just, I guess, a low hanging fruit, like an obvious feature that we would expect. So yeah.
No, yeah, I would love live activities. Maybe like the same idea, but with a widget on the home screen. It'd be cool to have like a live widget that shows you the score in real time. Being able to track individual players. Like, I know people are big into fantasy sports. So if you want to track an individual performer, that'd be cool. But outside of that, like, I don't want to overcomplicate it. You know, maybe being able to click on a game, and if you pay for, like, I pay for NBA League Pass, maybe if it could route me to NBA League Pass if a game is starting, so I can view it. But outside of that, like, I don't want it to be crazy. I want it to be simple.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like, I think this app has potential to be really good because of that simplicity. It just tells you sports scores. There's not, I don't even want any sports news. I don't care about somebody's, if you look at the headlines at ESPN, it's some of the most ridiculous things sometimes. Like, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less. I
love Sports Center and ESPN. Now I just don't watch it.
But I don't want to hear gossip and all that. Like, just give me the score, please. Thank you.
That's all I care about. But I mean, that was pretty much all we got this week from Apple. There was some also rumor, just to keep with the sports talk, about Apple doing an immersive type of VR, AR content for MLS for the playoffs this year, which I think it's still a couple months away. But people saw like an 8K camera with, what's it called? The dual lens 8K camera setup. So maybe Apple can give us some sports content, which I think that's going to be cool.
Yeah.
If there's some awesome sports content.
For sure. So with that being said, hold on.
Sorry, yeah, show it to us.
I don't normally do this, but so it's not exactly this, I don't think. Well, obviously it's not this, but like, we think about the Vision Pro and the 8K camera. Like, so basically what they have is like a dual fisheye lens, sort of like that.
That thing.
This is a Canon, let's see, RF 5.2 f2.8L fisheye lens. So this is an 8K camera. This connects to this, so you can get spatial video with that 180-degree VR, which is what this will be using. So here's Apple, what they said in their press release. They said, coming soon, all Apple Vision Pro users can experience the best of the 2023 MLS Cup playoffs. Hold on.
2023. Oh, maybe they're showing content from last year then. Maybe the content's ready.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even catch that. Like,
me either. I was like, oh, it's for the playoffs this year.
Reading is fundamental, man. Reading is fundamental. All right, so coming soon, all Vision Pro users can experience the best of the 2023 MLS Cup playoffs with the first ever sports film captured in Apple Immersive Video. Viewers will feel every heart-pounding moment in 8K 3D with a 180-degree field of view and spatial audio that transports them to each match. That's going to be awesome. And
that's sick.
But Apple kills me when they rebrand, like, it's Apple Immersive Video, basically VR 180 degrees, right? Like, obviously with the spatial, it's just funny, man. But yeah, so it's 2023, so it's not like,
So it's got to be out. I mean, did you do the? I guess you didn't do the demo in store when you picked up the Vision Pro, right? When I did it, they showed like a couple of clips. One of them was an MLS like goal being. It was like a 5-second snippet. And it was crazy. It was like an MLS goal being scored. So that's got to be from this.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder, like, if, and I'm sorry, I don't want to drag this out too long, but if
go for it.
If like, will we be able to get live games like this eventually? Because it said, like, there's a lot of post processing that's involved with this, but I don't. With Apple's obviously resources, they could maybe make it. I don't know if the technology exists to live stream
from in spatial video.
Yeah, like is there any app out there that does that now?
I mean, I remember like even years ago they were saying that was going to happen with like NBA courtside seats with the VR tech that was back 5 years ago maybe at this point. So I'm sure Apple's got something, because like being able to view live sports to feel like you're there is something that a lot of people want, including myself. Like that, I'd go back to the Apple Store to get another one.
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, that would be super. Yeah. Like, yeah, the NBA can make a lot of money off that. Like like the League Pass, including that, would make like having another tier of League Pass to include spatial would be like major. Imagine, like I read a comment the other day. Maybe it was, I don't know where I read it, but they were saying, what if this was like in the NFL and it automatically moves you to the line of scrimmage? Like you're right there on the 50-yard line, but when the team is driving the ball, it moves along the line of scrimmage, and it's
almost like you're on the coach on the sideline.
Yeah,
kind of vibe. Yeah, which is like, crazy.
I think the potential
I would pay a lot of money
for
that.
Yeah, but it's just like the technology, does that exist to where you can stream spatial? Because like I said, there's post-process, like the process of just filming this and then actually getting it viewable in spatial isn't totally like a super simple thing. I think some of the apps that have come out recently for Vision Pro will allow you to less of a workflow process to get to the point where it's viewable. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure in due time we'll get a situation where you can feel like you're courtside. Because I mean, think about it. If a courtside ticket to like a Lakers game is like $10,000, $15,000, depending on what the situation is.
And here's the thing. I'm sorry. Like, no, but my imagination is just kind of like, what if they had courtside seats, but you could literally see the person, like their avatar, the persona next to you, and you could like communicate with them. Like this, I'm taking this too far.
No, I mean, I'm down. I'm ready for it.
You can high five them like when your team scores or something.
Like, because I mean, that's the best part, being able to like enjoy your sports team with other people that are rooting for that same team. That's one of my favorite things to do. Yeah. So everybody's just kind of cheering for that. So, I mean, sky's the limit. It just depends on how much Apple wants to open this thing up, and depends on how much money they got to pay to license all this stuff probably, or who's paying who's shaking whose hand. Let's see what happens. I'm just excited for it.
Yeah.
For sure. It's just the beginning. I know the imagination started. I could see it in Jeff's face.
Yeah, that's dangerous, man. That's real dangerous.
But I mean, that's all we got this week. If you want to round us off, man.
Weekend. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Also, be sure if you like this podcast to subscribe. Number one, we'll have the link down below, and also rate us on the podcast app. And of course, you can always subscribe to us here on YouTube as well.
Please do.
And hope you guys have a great weekend.
So we can feed our pets,
Yeah. Yeah, they're eating us out of house and home.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Thanks for the time.